I got this movie last week at a used movie and video game store, and it's AKIRA, and I've never seen it, but I'd always heard a ton about it in high school, and I've been a huge fan of, anime. As a kid, I was really into Dragon Ball Z, and I've also seen a good portion of the Miyazaki films and really enjoyed those. So I've been recommended to watch this movie by countless people, and I'm surprised I hadn't seen it up till now. It was originally released in 1988, I think, and it was, groundbreaking, because if you'd seen cartoons back then, they're not only not animated this well, but more importantly, they weren't intended for adult audiences like this one is. Like Looney Tunes. Those were made in the 1930s and 40s. And I guess I shouldn't say that they were for kids, because they weren't. They were made for adults during the World War II. Adults went and saw those Looney Tunes in the theaters. So to say this is the first animated series, or animated anything intended for adults only, isn't really true. I guess Looney Tunes is intended for everyone. And the good thing about Looney Tunes is that the humor in it's still relevant. It's still funny even today. Like, it's not dated after all these years. I think one reason why I wasn't racing to Blockbuster to go rent this in high school, when all the kids were telling me about what a great movie it is because all those kids who were talking about this movie were also into really horror flicks, which I assumed this one would also be in that sort of genre, because that one thing pretty much everyone notes about this movie is that it's really violent, and I speculated that it would probably be a bunch of mindless blood and guts like all the other horror movies that these kids are into these days. But it's not. In truth, this movie is actually not very violent at all. In relation to all other violent movies out there. Again, it was at the time, an animated movie like this to have so much violence was very shocking, especially to American audiences. So I think that's what kind of highlights this movie. It's what really stuck into people's brains, even though in reality it's not an excessively violent movie, and most of the violence is more surreal and not so much it's not like a perverted, sort of violence like in the Saw movies or countless other stuff that just relies on this mindless shock factor. Like, good thing about this movie, concerning the violence, is that it isn't unnecessary. Like, there's a reason people are getting, blown up, sort of. Well, actually, the storylines, the pacing of the storyline in this movie is kind of hard to follow from many people. I haven't read the manga, but I heard they had to neglect huge parts of storyline, and a lot of people claim that this movie's almost a completely different story from the manga, and that makes sense because you'd have to rework, the several volumes of hundreds of pages and hyper condense it into a 2-hour film. And I think, even though I haven't read the series, I think he did a good job because it is very entertaining, even if you don't know what's going on half the time. Which I want to make clear that the storyline also was not what I expected. I was expecting to be confused the entire time, because that's another thing that people always mention along with the violence, is that the storyline is just all over the place. Now, I'd agree to that to an extent, but it really kind of fits for this chaotic movie. Like, there is a really chaotic feel, especially the second half. You know, you want to be engrossed in that just this kind of insane feeling of not really knowing what's going on, because the characters don't either. So you feel like you're there in the movie. And the last scene is freaking amazing. Like, I watched it probably 5 times after I finished it on the first night. I just kept watching that last scene where, I might pronounce his name wrong, but Tuetsu is, well, I don't want to give it away, but the animation is just nuts when he's, you know, evolving into this creature. And the characters in this movie are good too. They're not as flat as I was thinking they would be based on the first 30 minutes into the film. You know, it takes quite a while into the film before you can even really distinguish character traits. And there isn't a ton of character development, but Kanata, this guy right here, he probably shows the most in the film. And he's also kind of all over the place, which I'm not really sure if that's good or bad, but some of the things he does just doesn't really seem to fit. Like, he has a sense of humor one minute, and then he's dead serious the next, which I liked that. But yeah, watch this movie. It's pretty good. It's really good. I would call it a visual masterpiece. Yep. It's a good movie.